So this is the public meeting for the Community Preservation Committee, 2023 for fiscal year 2024, which is all kind of scary. And as always, we are entertaining questions and comments and whatever from the public. So we will start with, unless anybody on the committee has anything to say at this point, we want to get out of here because the weather's.
I think one thing we should just reconfirm are the dates for the following meeting because.
Okay, so the following meeting is that I can't read my own handwriting, apparently.
We've had a lot of dialogue on that.
So the next, the deadline for the applications is February 10th. Our meeting to vote and is the 27th, which is a Monday, and not the 23rd, which is a Thursday, which is what I wrote. So it's the voting meeting is February 23rd, and then we have a backup meeting of March 6th.
The voting meeting's February 27th.
The 27th.
7th, yes, what did I say, 23rd again?
Yep.
Oh, geez.
That's what I suggested we do.
There's a reason why I want to retire. And I keep telling everybody I want to retire, but nobody listens, so here I am again. So your applications must be here February 10th at noon in the selectman's office. And if they are late, they will not be considered. So this is serious, people. February 10th at noon, because we rejected an application a few years ago that was late. So I'm going to start with Arthur. When you're going to go down the line and then back and forth, and please tell me who you are, or tell us who you are and what organization you represent, and we will go from there.
Friends of Gould Metals, Arthur Dutiel. This year, we're asking for a total of $11,916.25. That
Okay.
comprises of 25% are DCA Community Forest Stewardship Implementation Grant. The grant is $19,665. Our 25% becomes $4,916.25. Item number 2 is stump grinding.
Would you repeat that? Would you repeat that total for me? The 4,000 what? 4,000?
$4,916.25 we're asking from CPA.
Okay. Okay, now stump grinding.
Stump grinding, $2,000, and this will grind the stumps that will be cutting trees, and therefore it leaves open space so when they mow the land, they don't have to go around and invasive plants take over. Hiring a professional tree service is $2,000. Usually we put in $500. This year we're asking for an additional. There is a beautiful silver maple, a big crown that really needs some attention. We're going to lose it, so we're asking for that extra this year. This year, fortunately, we have an individual who is volunteering and wants to put in a wildflower and butterfly garden. So we're going to ask for $2,500 that will till the soil, prepare the soil with various nutrients and possibly peat moss if it needed, whatever that person wishes, and the plant materials.
And where is that going to be?
She's looking over the land, and at this time, it will be somewhere in that field near the 183 parking lot.
Okay.
And who's the volunteer?
A volunteer.
Who is the volunteer?
I don't have that name, sorry, I didn't bring it.
Oh, okay.
Next meeting, I'll have that information. We're asking for $500 for 2 park benches.
And will those be honoring any particular people or just park benches?
Just park benches at this time, yes.
Could they be an honor if someone wanted to?
At this time, we have been asked that question, and the committee decided not to at this time.
Okay.
There's only two, George Deary and George Wisłowski.
So if I croak, you won't let me have my bench?
Well, bring it. I don't know, I'll beat you. So that again is a total of $11,916.25.
Okey dokey. All right,
Sally, you get an monument in the center of the new intersection.
okay, thanks.
Any questions?
I know, I think that's good.
Ron's here. One of the plus things, we've been volunteering 14 years now,
Yes,
improving gold medals. And our goal is, we've cut down many trees, we've opened up spaces. And
How do you spell it?
DCR fund, this year, part of that funding will be planting trees. We'll be planting trees in some of the wet areas that we took out invasives. And now that it has been prepared and prepped, we're going to start putting back trees that are environmentally friendly and also have berries of different types, so the wildlife will start to enjoy those spaces.
good. Good. And they will be native trees.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Well,
Not hemlocks, I'm assuming.
no. Speaking of which, you got the other figure on your hemlock trees.
Oh, yeah, I know.
This is kind of conjunction with this, not that we're taking on any new projects for the Conservation Commission, which I'm the chairman, but the foot property, which is the property between the highway garage and the Grange. That's owned by the town and has been since 1969 when it was donated to the town. Pretty much since 1969, nothing has been done with that property. They tore down the shed, which is on part of that property. They've been storing their snow plows and equipment and garbage and army trucks and everything else on the foot property. We got most of that cleared up. The slab that's there now, the cement slab, that's gonna be removed. So what we're looking to do, and I've gotten a rough price, is plant some flowering trees in that space. If we plant something there, landscape it, maybe it won't become, I don't know what you would call it.
Refuge.
Right, yeah, refuge area. Okay, so, I don't know, would you turn the paper? I've got paperwork, but we'll talk about that after.
Do you have rough estimate, Ron?
$5,200, but that's really rough because price of things are going up so much. I don't know what the price of flowering trees would be. And we were talking about 70, either crab apples or some other. Since it's supposed to be a bird sanctuary, something with berries on it and flowers would probably be best in there. There's some prep work that needs to be done because I don't know if you'd call anything that's there now soil. It's probably more like asphalt and blacktop, and
Ron, did you say the town owns that land?
town owns it.
Yeah.
It's under the auspices of the Conservation Commission. There's a number of areas in town. It's one of the closer ones. I think there was 27 acres in there. But.
And does that property go all the way to the river?
Yes. And from the Grange to the edge of the blacktop almost, it's hard to see the exact property lines. I have a map, but there's no starting points or ending points that I can identify. So there'll be space to park, but not space to put snowplows and trailers and piles of rock and that sort of stuff. So we're looking to improve the property, this eyesight, sight lane through there. I talked to Hugh, he's willing to do some of the prep work for us. He's gonna take the slab out and then we'll topsoil it. And then, but to plant trees, we have to dig holes and we may need some excavation from bigger equipment because like I said, we don't know what's in there. But the $5,200 was for topsoil and the trees planted. You know, we dig a big hole, put topsoil in, put the tree in. But to dig that big a hole, we might need bigger equipment. So, but that's won't cost the town anything because you said he can do it. So the $5,200, we're talking 7 trees, possibly more if we can negotiate prices on that. But that would be planting, staking, and the trees themselves.
Cool.
Hopefully we could do it next year. See.
Might want to think about putting a little path through there that people could walk.
There's gonna be places to go. I've also talked with Jess Toro, and I haven't gotten anything back to her about going in that property for invasive weed control, but that'll have to be in the future because we didn't get any prices or estimates on that. So it would look better, and once we do something with it, then it won't revert to what it was a while back.
So everybody wants a pretty dump.
Well, we better looking to know about this.
Okay,
That's my spiel.
good. Moose, are you here for the Gold Meadows or something
No,
else?
I'm here for, I'm representing Kevin Forran, sometimes called Moose.
Never heard you called Kevin. Yes.
And this is in respect to the Bullard Woods property, managing that. I have an ask for your considerations of, in totality, $16,500 for 2 distinctly different projects, but they're enmeshed in the end. The one project will cost $11,500, which would be to continue on a more extensive removal of invasive vines and plants within the Bullard Woods Park. We began this endeavor probably 4 or 5 years ago using Jess Toro, Native Habitat Restoration. And she's done a significant amount at that point in time, yet there's going to be some more work that needs to be done. It's an ongoing project. Bullard Woods itself is 55 acres, and but the foresting aspect of it is probably half of that. So this year, she's already committed to doing some work for us from grant money that she received from the state. However, we want to go a little bit further and dive deeper into the woods, which is where the $11,500 would come from, would be used. And that's, we're looking at the invasives that we probably mostly know of what they are, the kiwi being one of the more damaging ones. There's a resurgence of that happening in the woods. The bittersweet, the barberry, the wild grape, euonymus, so forth and so on. And that would pretty much cover probably 2/3 of the entire Bullard Woods Park. So that would be that project, okay? The second project is something is a little bit more interesting to some degree. Because Bullard Woods is becoming more frequented by visitors, not just from our local community members, but from outside visitors, so forth. We wanted to take the network of trails that are within Bullard Park, and I refer to it as Bullard Park because that's how Mrs. Bullard wanted it to be named. But there is one section of land in Bullard Park which is a lot of old growth trees there. Not as many as there used to be because they're aging. I have carved out it's at least a quarter of a mile of a trail that winds its way through the old growth aspect of the forest. And those trees are magnificent and they hold a lot of value educationally. However, when a person walks through the trail, they may see a large tree. And that's all they see is a large tree. So my vision is to identify, and there are 11 trees that are of significant stature, and to identify them by having plaques made, engraved plaques. And that would, on the plaque would be the engraving of the characteristic of the tree, its name, so forth and so on, its value to the ecology within the environment, its ecosystem, to have identified its commercial value, and to also have identified its medicinal value and how it was used by our Native Americans. So it would be more than just a simple plaque. It would have a lot of information, education on the plaque that, in my opinion, the purpose of this project is to bring awareness and education to the park users. This knowledge may or may not foster greater land stewardship, not just within the park, but within our own communities, and perhaps even philanthropy. The cost of that, included in that, would be to replace the kiosk that is currently in Bullard Woods. It's a very small, brown, depressing-looking kiosk. We have a contractor who will make us a beautiful kiosk, get ready, set to go, which we can therefore have property maps within the kiosk, easily identifiable, and have a section of it, which would also include, the maps would include from Bullard Park over to Gould Meadows through to 183. So the entire network of trails that is from Bullard Woods to Gould Meadows would be identified on a very large kiosk, making it more user-friendly. Also, a section of the kiosk would be available for educational purposes. So if there's something new and exciting and important that people might want to know about or need to know about, we will have that become a posting board for that kind of information. Total price on that would be $5,000, leading us up to the sum total of $16,500.
Those, just quick couple questions. The plaques, would they be attached to the tree?
No. This is a quick example of what one plaque would look like.
Is that
It's
yes.
a hard plastic engraved, and this would be set upon a 4x4 post. And it would not be attached to the tree. It would be set directly in front of the tree.
In your educational description of the value of these amazing old growth trees, and as you well know, I've often been down there when dog walking and what else. Have you thought of, there's a lot of literature these days about how old growth trees actually are more efficient and productive in terms of
Sequestering carbon.
exactly.
They're carbon banks.
They are carbon banks. And
That's would be identified in the kiosk about how the old growth section functions, if you're part of its ecology. Yeah. I have a sample of what would be written on, this is just a hypothetical, on one of the plaques, if you mind, if you can indulge me. This is a black cherry tree, okay, and it has the name Prunus serratina. A fast-growing tree, as much as 2 feet per year, can tolerate light, shade, and drought. Commonly used for flooring, furniture, cabinet making, and staining qualities, therefore a high market value. A great source of food for birds and small animals. However, only the fleshy part of the fruit is edible for humans. The seeds contain toxins. Native Americans consume the fruit as a source for high energy value, consumed on long hunting excursions and travels. Its oxidant medicinal value is great for relieving pain from arthritis and gout. It's high in potassium and B vitamins. Also a good cost here. Its culinary value is found mostly in flavoring breads, drinks, and jams.
So just out of curiosity, of
Maybe
the,
too much information. I don't know.
Oh, I think it's fun.
yeah,
great.
of those 11 amazing trees that you've identified, one of them is a black cherry?
Yeah.
And what about oak, hemlock, white pines, ash?
That one, yeah.
Do you know what the,
Hey,
roughly?
guys,
There's-
we've got like 20 of these to get through and the weather's really bad.
Yeah,
Yeah, I might suggest we kind of keep it moving.
okay, great.
I didn't hear what Patrick said.
He says we should move along.
Well, that's your
That is
decision, but I'm very curious and I don't,
There's 11 of them, or
Yeah.
at least 11.
okay.
I think it sounds great. Hopefully people will read the signs. Gary?
He's my driver.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I'm a curator at the Stockbridge Library Museum and Archives. I have several projects that are about preserving our archival material. One is, and I'm still negotiating the prices on these, but one involves preserving and treating 8 daguerreotypes, which are early photography that were taken by Anson Clark, who was a photographer in West Stockbridge in the 1840s. I'm arranging for an estimate. It could be anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000, but I can't tell you that exact number. I'll have it very soon because I have a conservator who's going to give me the price on that. And that would be really important because they're some of the earliest images from this area in terms of, we know they came from the studio of Anson Clark. He was a very early photographer in this area. And we would like to be able to also take digital images, high quality, while they're being treated so that we could have them digitally preserved as well. But also they could be potentially on display. They couldn't be on for a long time because they're sensitive. But as they are now, they if you don't know about them, they're in a very special case. Some of them are broken, some of them, it's just time and wear. So that's my first project that I will propose. And again, I'm gonna have those numbers much more by the time we get to the proposal. The second one is one that is involving digitizing a series of master reels of microfilm that are currently being held offsite in what's called Iron Mountain. It's like yeah, I've heard of it. It's like a storage facility. We pay every year for it. It's just part of the old kind of keep it here in the vault. I'd like to have it, those materials digitized because they're the master microfilm for the church records, congregational church records that are on microfilm. 1776 to 1850. We have Berkshire Playhouse records that are there. And then we have the Berkshire News, 1890 to 1891, 1895. Those I'm working with a conservation center to get the number. They did me an estimate, but it was several years ago. And that was running at that time around $600 to do that. I don't want to quote that right now because I've written to them and said, please update this. We know things have changed. And so I will have that number much more firm, and I would like to request that so that we could digitize them, put them on our server, and we could get them on our website and have more flexibility to be able to access them for people far and wide on the internet.
You'd still retain the originals.
The original documents?
Yes.
Yeah, we have the original documents, but they're so fragile that the goal is to be able to get them out there so that more and more people can use them. Some of the newspapers are really just, early newspapers were so acidic. Like, for example, the Berkshire News, 1890, that's a very acidic paper. You wouldn't want people to be looking at those for everyday news. So, yeah.
So earlier on, Arthur in his presentation mentioned that the grant that they were asking was going to be a 25% match to another grant. And we often really try to match, incentivize other fundraising. And in these archival projects, would the funding match other funding or?
There's that potential. I would need to look into that, but whether it would be a direct match right now, it's something that can be used in the future. When you look at grant funding, they do ask for, what kinds of match can you provide? And we can cite this grant as, however much we get as a match that would apply for it. But I don't have anything right now sitting in front of me that would work as a match.
If in your application you could cover that subject, I think that would be of interest.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, is that it, India?
That's all.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Margaret Sharon. I'm the interim executive director of Chesterwood. And I just want to start by saying I've been doing my research, and I just want to thank this committee for all their incredible support of projects at Chesterwood over the past 10 years. Everything from conserving paintings to restoring a garden arch to the stucco breakfast porch. So I'm here today to propose that you help support the restoration of the brick garden wall in the formal gardens that Daniel Chester French designed in 1900. They are in desperate need of not just shoring up, but they actually have to be taken all the way down to the ground. New foundations have to be put in and then rebuilt with bricks that are still viable, re-stuccoed, everything from new terracotta caps, pouring new footings, backfill, laying bricks, and of course, repairing any kind of lawn damage. All the ferns and the growth that's on the garden wall right now will all be safely put away and replanted while all the project's happening, and then replanted when the project's finished. This was an original architectural element to the garden. It encloses the garden and separates it from the rest of the property and creates this, magical space of an enclosed garden and an outdoor room. So we definitely feel like it's a really important architectural element to the Chesterwood landscape and gardens.
Excuse me, can you tell me it's called the Red Garden Wall?
Oh, Arthur, what would you call it? Just the red brick garden wall.
Okay, I didn't know if it had a real name.
Yeah. Just the brick wall of the formal gardens. So
Okay.
if you enter into the gardens, there's two entrances through the wall. Our senior superintendent of buildings and grounds, Jerry Blash, has gotten a couple of proposals for this work. We'll probably go with the lesser of the two, which is about $130,000. And we are asking the Conservation Commission to support this project at $20,000.
I'm sorry, 20,000 out of a total of?
130,000. And we will be receiving matching funds from our parent organization, the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And that will all be outlined in the proposal.
And does the National Trust encourage this kind of local grants to match theirs or as incentivize?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They love to see that we have local support.
Sure.
And I'll just, remind everyone that Chesterwood is free to all Stockbridge residents.
We like free. Okay, any other questions? All right, next.
If I may, Peter Strauss, just because I sent you a document yesterday which has been overtaken by the presentation that Bruce made.
I'm sorry, Peter, I didn't catch your question.
I sent you an email yesterday proposing work with the disappearing hemlocks in Bullard Woods, which would involve the use of an insecticide spray as was done in Ice Glen. But there have been some subsequent developments that have led us to say, no, we'll go with this application for the moment. Possibly you'll get a formal application from us, but I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you receive that?
I haven't seen it, no.
It's sent to your address.
Okay.
Where did you send it?
I got it.
You got it? Because
I got it.
I haven't seen it. I checked my mail before I came up and I didn't see it.
What Peter was talking about, if I can just add in there, is the health and vitality of the hemlock trees.
Right, yeah, no, we got it.
However, that is being handled with a different source of funding. There's a lot of assessment and research that is being done presently, but the funding for that will not be an ask of the CPA.
Okay, we got a preview of it with the forestry and also Concom. So we have some idea of what comes down the pike and a lot of thinking that has to be done.
Yeah.
Yes,
My name is Robert Harrison. I'm an architect with Berkshire Design and Bradley Architects, and I represent the Berkshire Theater Festival.
I'm sorry, you represent?
Berkshire Theater Festival.
Okay.
And the Playhouse has been closed since COVID and is in desperate need of interior and exterior restoration. And turns out that 2028 will be the 100th anniversary of the Berkshire Theater Festival. And so we're embarking on a very long project, intending to be completed in time for reopening in 2028, possibly 2027 for a dry run, make sure everything works perfectly. But the idea is to reopen for full use in 2028, the 100th anniversary, and bring the Playhouse back to its full glory. It's our intention to come to this committee with an ask for $100,000. The project will involve millions. We would dedicate this first $100,000 to an immediate need, which is new roofing on the building, new flashing on the building, and restoring the eaves and the soffits and the details along the drip edge of the roof, which is the entire perimeter of the roof because it's a hip roof.
It's a what roof?
A hip roof. So it's the entire
got
perimeter
it.
of the building, the entire perimeter of the roof needs to be restored. And it's also our intention as part of this overall project to winterize the building and make it accessible to the community year-round. And so also part of this ask will include insulating the roof. So we'll provide you with specific drawings and specific cost projections and photos of the details. But it is we're asking for the entire cost of this particular piece of the project in the context of a continuing project that will be millions of dollars, which will be raised by the Berkshire Theater Festival.
okay, I'm not sure about the insulation, whether that's going to be permittable, but it might be.
So just out of curiosity, that building was moved at one point.
Correct. It's not in its original location.
Right. Out of that historical overview, when was the move? Do you happen to know?
I don't, but I would.
I believe it was in 1927. The theater opened as a theater in 1928, but it literally rolled down Main Street.
I know, yeah.
So let me introduce Nick Paleologos. He's the executive director of the Berkshire Theater Group, the umbrella of the Berkshire Theater Festival.
On the roofing that you said, the new roofing, what material would you use for the new roof?
So I don't believe, we'll do some research, I don't believe that the original roof was
Asphalt?
well, it was slate. I don't believe the original roof was slate. So it will probably be an architectural asphalt shingle, which is better than the asphalt shingle that's on there now.
Just out of
have more of a profile.
FYI, quite a few years ago, this committee was asked to help the town out in restoring the roof to this very building we're in right now. And we actually turned them down on that because initially, but said that if you were going to restore the slate roof and could give us the difference in the price between restoring the slate roof and putting in a new architectural asphalt roof, we could conceivably fund the difference. And ultimately, that's what happened. So they were able to keep the historical roof, but you're saying that there really is no historical roof, from what I hear you say.
It may have been wooden shakes. I think we would have to do the research. I'm almost certain, given the configuration of the roof, it would not have been slate.
Yeah.
And it may have been a copper roof, but I don't think so.
So just for your information, I think that if, you're asking us to fund a percentage of the much larger amount, but I would suggest that it might be better to earmark specific things that would be of definite historical from a perspective of a historical preservation.
So we'll do the research, and if we can justify and use material that we can show has historic value, then we will include that. Otherwise,
yeah, I would strongly suggest that you go to the historical commissions, the Historic Preservation and the Historic Commission, and talk to them about what you're going to ask for. There are very specific requirements by the state in order for you to do any kind of restoration work. We cannot fund anything that would possibly be considered a repair.
Understood.
So you need to justify the historic nature of the work that you want to do. I'm not saying that it's not, so there are not certainly the Playhouse. The Playhouse is certainly an historic building and has great history in this town. So it's certainly something that we would be interested in, but it does have to conform to the Secretary's standards. So
we'll bring documentation.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
We'll do that investigation. Thank you for pointing that out.
Just one quick point. In your presentation, would you be able to summarize the aggregate project? And obviously, this is a component of the larger multi-million-dollar project that you referred to.
So we're in design. I can certainly provide a narrative with what the intentions are, but I wouldn't be able to give you any graphic presentation. Would a narrative suffice?
Well, it would give us the scope to the project.
Yes, absolutely. So we will do that as well. Absolutely.
Thank you.
we have, for instance, replaced windows that were not something, we always say that, if you went to Home Depot and you bought a new window and you put it in, we wouldn't be able to fund that. the difference between the cost of the window from Home Depot and the correct historical restoration, we would fund the difference between those. So if you can get those kinds of figures for us as well, like, okay, so if we're going to replace the roof with asphalt shingles, it'll cost X. If we replace the roof with shake, it would cost X. And we would consider, as Tom suggested, the difference between those things, because our mission is to restore these buildings to their historic.
Got it. So again, we'll do that research. Thank you.
Pat?
Want to come up?
Sure. I'm not sure people can hear you from the back.
I'm here representing Laurel Hill Association. First, I want to thank the commission for support of the Laurel Hill Park restoration. That has gone well, and it's taken 4 years, but we're finally at the last stage. And I'm here about the Mary Flynn Trail. The Mary Flynn Trail is a handicap accessible trail built on the bed of the old Berkshire Street Railway. And that parallels the freight and passenger railroad line. The trolley was in activity between 1902 and 1930. And at that time, when it was built, it had all drainage, sluiceways incorporated that took all of the drainage from the Ice Glen properties that go all the way to the river, and the Sedgwick Reservation Laurel Hill properties that go to the river. So that the water drainage under the railroad and under the trolley line were intact. And when the Mary Flynn Trail was built on these town and Laurel Hill properties in 20 years ago this fall, the sluiceways were bridged and were boardwalked as at the beginning. And over the years that those sluiceways have failed, and we just recently got a rough, or I shouldn't say an estimate. We had a professional architect or engineer look at these sluiceways, and they need to be repaired. And because they have failed, they have deteriorated the boardwalk and the bridges over them. So that we would like to have funds for, and we haven't had time to do full estimates of what it was going to take, and so we're putting out a $20,000 proposal. And because of these structures, any repairs are going to mean at least partial, or if not complete, closure of the trail. And these trails are extremely popular. I was down there one weekend, and it was almost like gridlock, the number of people, all age groups that use these trails. So it's very popular.
Okay, we don't use the word repair. Ever. Just saying.
I think we could consider this one a capital improvement under the statute.
Exactly.
And
capital improvement.
As well as, it would, recreational use and rehabilitation. Those are all three areas where we can fund.
I wasn't sure, because of some of the conversations with these other proposals, would these be classed as historic structures at least the drainage, some of it was, well, most of it was what I would call a terracotta piping that, over the 100 years or so.
Because I don't think would you want to repair or replace the terracotta piping as terracotta piping?
Not necessarily. We would like to work with some sort of stone.
Okay, so it would be under recreation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I'd get in unless you plan to replace it as an historic, structure.
We would prefer to do something more environmentally.
I would go for recreation.
So Pat, you don't know the estimates yet, but in your application, which is coming up soon, will you be able to give a guesstimate in terms of?
Yes, we should be able to hopefully get some expertise down there to give us some rough ideas of what's going to be involved.
Can I make a comment?
Somebody have a question?
Yeah, I just want to this is Kate. Pat is my chair.
Kate, the volume from Patrick and Kate and everyone is coming on much too loud. Can that be toned down a little bit?
I don't know. Probably not.
I'll try to speak softer.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, just know that it's being amplified a lot. And
Okay, I'm going to move my laptop back and I apologize for that.
no, it's just.
No, I get it. I get it. So I just wanted to mention, I'm on the same Laurel Hill Association committee with Pat, the Properties Committee. She's my chair. And when we met with our architect engineer, that's Dana Bixby, we were very specific about asking for nature-based solutions wherever and whenever possible.
Great.
Definitely.
Hey.
I just would also point out that work that improves compliance with the American with Disabilities Act, as that is an accessible trail, also qualify. So, you might just bear that in mind when you write up your narrative, because there's a lot of past stuff on something like that.
And it's even a possibility that we could go for an AARP grants for this, because it is,
That would be great in terms of matching funds. And if you could put that in the proposal, that would be looked on favorably as well.
Yeah, that.
Good suggestion.
That grant is.
What's the name of this?
I'm sorry?
Laurel Hills. Laurel Hills.
We always like to be part of a greater thing. As as everybody knows, that a lot of times it's whatever we can do, which I should remind everybody, you may be asking for a horse and you might get a pony. Because we have what we have to spend, and you're seeing the numbers pile up. And we would like to be able to say, sure, you can have all the money you want, but we may not be able to do that. So we may have to.
It ain't there.
to think about the pony. Okay, next.
We're a team.
I see that.
My name is Randy Warner, and I'm the new chair of the Stockbridge Affordable Housing Trust. And Liz Wheeler is here as a member of the trust. And this is Lindsay, who is the major domo at the Eden Court. And missing from our team is someone from Construct representing Pinewoods, but we've had extensive meetings with Pinewoods and have the information.
I'm here.
Oh, good. Sorry
And
about.
Sam is here. Yep.
Oh, terrific. Great. Is that you, Jane? I see. Okay, terrific. So we do have Jane Ralph, who is the executive director of Construct. So we're here at both Construct and Heaton Court are going to make their presentations, but we're coming to you as a group to ask you, the trust to ask you for an allocation of the housing, whatever funds you have determined to give to housing purposes to come through the trust in future years. So we ask that for several reasons. One, most importantly, the flexibility that if you allocate clearly to us and we allocate it in accordance with your rules. And obviously any money that we allocate would have to be in accordance with CPC rules. But we would have more flexibility during the year to allocate the funds than you do once a year. So we have a big ask, which is, as I think most of you know, Pine Woods is in very, very difficult physical condition right now. There's a lot of delayed maintenance and there's structural.
We don't use that word.
Sorry, thank you very much.
Ever.
Apologies. There are extensive capital needs for this project.
That's good.
As defined by our capital expense report of future costs, which the Construct people have paid for, and it defines in fairly great detail a lot of the conditions that, and this will be part of our submission to you. But what we're thinking of asking you is that, and this is something I understand that CPC has not done before, is there's about at least $1 million worth of capital needs right now at Pine Woods. Fortunately, because of Andrea's extremely good management, there isn't quite as much at Heaton Court as there is at Pine Woods. But we have a very preliminary analysis of $1 million there. And there may be significant other money because we don't have the structural report yet. And so there may be structural costs. So I will turn this over though. Jane, do you want to come in and talk about Pine Woods and how you see these capital costs?
Sure. I don't think all of the capital needs are a complete surprise to the CPC. We've been coming to you for a number of years, and part of the thought.
Again, the volume, just talk down. This is being amplified really loudly here.
Okay. All right. I'll try to speak more softly.
Thank you.
Rather than continuing to come in a piecemeal fashion, it was the Affordable Housing Trust's idea that they moved and voted on in their meeting 2 days ago, that we come to you with the approach of bonding for 15 years to meet all the needs, because that is a mechanism that you have in place to do that. I think the capital needs assessment is actually quite comprehensive and reflects the needs that we need to meet to be able to get ahead of things so that we can have a sustainable, affordable housing. We can continue to provide that for the town of Stockbridge. We have over 25 kids in that community. It has been our most successful affordable housing community in terms of folks moving on to permanent, to home ownership. And so in spite of the physical limitations, it's been an amazingly successful program, and we want to continue to provide that for the town of Stockbridge. Patrick, I think you're more knowledgeable than I am about the bonding, if there's anything you'd like to say to that. And I'm happy to answer questions.
We can't hear you, Patrick.
Sorry, we identified something like 10 projects, I believe, or 11 projects that Jane and Kathy and June had reviewed with us. Donna, I had a chance to talk to Donna today, and we came up with a review of what projects would be appropriate for CPC and which wouldn't. And so, Donna indicated that the boilers, Jane, the driveway, appliances, flooring, siding replacement, and roofing could all be bonded through CPC as long-term capital projects. She felt that not allowed through CPC could be the community building stove, the tree work he talked about, and the painting. But the amount of those three items is less than the amount that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and Construct indicated would be Construct's portion of the aggregate project. So it's conceivable that those projects could fall under the Construct piece rather than the CPC piece. We recognize this is a big ask, and I think that I think it would be appropriate for us to also discuss a request to the select board for some portion of this to be used from our remaining ARPA funds, which I believe total $380,000 that are unencumbered at this point. So, you know, we've got a fair amount of revenues for this year. We've got the ability to bond. We also have potentially ARPA funds. The idea, though, is pretty straightforward, which is, you know, when you look at the Tuckerman Bridge, you look at the Curtisville Bridge, you look at the Larry Walk Bridge, you know, we've learned our lesson as a town that deferred maintenance is something that costs us more in the long term. And rather than drib and drab these projects over 10 years with current funds, you know, we can these are all projects that are going to last decades. And in doing so, we can ensure that things like mold and things like, you know, the problems that occur when things like roofs and boilers and siding fails, you know, won't occur, and we'll be able to maintain these structures and keep their lifespan much longer if we you know, bite the bullet and maintain them as a group. Similarly, you know, Andrea and I have been talking today about a similar request for long-term capital projects that may total, you know, $400,000 to $550,000 at Heaton Court. And I had a conversation today with both Don and Michael about trying to do some kind of a combined bond effort that would basically, you know, encumber the you know, 20 to 30% of our annual CPC revenues for housing over the next 15 to 20 years. So it's basically a fix it all now strategy, and then, you know, take advantage of relatively low interest rates around 4% for what we can go out to bond over a 15 to 20 year period.
The only other point that I
might
wanted
have
to
missed this, but quickly, what's the total ask in terms of cash now and in terms of the bonding? What are
I
those?
don't think we've completely gotten there yet, Tom. I think that my sense is that it would be, you know, that the total cost of the bond on an annual basis should not exceed maybe $50,000 to $60,000. And so it would be some kind of combination of the current sources, which I believe for our group, not including fiscal year 24, we've got something like $913,000. We've got, like I said, $380,000 in ARPA funds, and then we've got the ability to do a long-term bond. So at $1 million bond, you'd be looking at about $52,000 or $53,000 a year.
So you're looking for $1 million bond that would require roughly 50,000 a year from CPC for how many years?
20.
15 to 20,
15 to 20.
depending on the structure.
So is that, then do you have a other ask besides the bonding, or is this your total big ask?
We would be asking.
For Pinewoods or for the Affordable Housing Trust?
I'm sorry?
For Pinewoods or the Affordable Housing Trust?
So they're going to be separate requests. One is $1 million for the Affordable Trust, and then there'll be a separate request for Pinewoods. Is that correct?
No, we would not
No,
be
no.
asking anything in addition to that. The only other point that I wanted to make is just to remind folks that Pinewoods was built with CPC funds or CPA funds.
Well, we're very aware of that.
I just always want to make sure you remember.
It was our major first project for a number of years. We spread out the funding over 5 years, was it?
Yeah, something like that.
And it was Sally's recommendation, actually, that we commit what it was, 50,000 a year?
I think so.
And that was really the startup funds for Pinewoods and help leverage the other money.
Absolutely.
I do have some concerns about turning over the decision-making to the trust. I think that as a group, we scrutinize each project by project by project. And we have to weigh the different projects and what priorities they are. And simply to say, leave it to us to decide how to spend it, I personally think would find that problematic. I just want to be candid with you and give you a heads up on that. I
Tom, we did
think
do that for
that,
the last 2 years.
pardon?
We did do that for the last 2 years, obviously, with the two grants that we made in the last 2 fiscal years. I mean, obviously, the money that is in the trust now came from CPC and it's undesignated at this point.
It did. Yes, that did.
But in the case of these projects.
And also in terms of bonding for unknown costs, I think,
Not unknown, Tom, not at all. Not at all unknown.
well, you know that there has to be all kinds of capital projects, but you wrote throughout the $1 million, but, we don't know exactly how it's going to be spent for what.
No, you will.
That will be laid out in detail
In your
in the application.
proposal, and then what do we leave for you to decide?
Well, I think we're confusing two things.
I'm sure we are.
Let me go back and say, to make it very clear, we're asking you to consider allocating a certain amount of your annual funds to a bond that would be used for the capital needs at Pine Woods to bring it up to code and to current standards. And also, it would be more than $1 million because we would be including in that bond capital needs of the Heaton Court. And we would be very specific in what the funds can be used for in the bond, what the bond proceeds can be used for. And we have a beginning allocation for Pine Woods, and Andrea has started her list of what her funds would be used for.
Okay, so if I understand what you're asking for this pot of money, which is the sum total of the needs that you've identified as being necessary in order to do the capital improvements that you see as necessary, but you want the money so that you can pay the bills as things go along. Is that correct?
Correct. And so we can respond to the needs as quickly as possible.
I
do want to
that
make sure that everything is up to code at Pine Woods.
Okay, then I'm confused.
Okay,
Okay,
let's try again. We're asking you to take a step to create a bonding so that the proceeds will be somewhere in the $1.4 to $1.5 million.
right.
And that you back into how much a year based on the financing totals.
Right.
And we haven't, Michael has started to look at that for us, but we don't know the specifics, but we will when we make a written proposal to you. That money would be your money. You're the only one who can bond it because you're the only one who has the legal right to collect the taxes each year. And so it would come in, and just as they do now, Pine Woods and Heaton Court would
Submit the bills to us.
submit the bills to you for the items that will be on as part of the bond documentation. There's elaborate stuff you have to do to get a bond.
So they'd submit the bills, but do we decide whether or not we're going to pay them or not, or are we committed to paying the bills that are submitted?
You're committed.
This would be just like any other project for CPC. So for example, Pine Woods is asked to replace 26 boilers at a cost of whatever it is, $14,000 a boiler. So that project is going to be a standalone that will be one of 7 or 8 capital projects that would be used, that would be paid for with the proceeds of a bond, which is basically borrowing against a future stream of revenue just so that we can pay for these things now. because obviously requesting $400,000 for boilers would tap the entire budget for CPC for this year and then some. So the idea is rather than put off these capital improvements and, for example, risk that a whole bunch of units don't have heat next winter because these 20-year-old boilers are starting to fail, we simply recognize that there's some capital maintenance that has to happen. We look at those capital projects on a standalone basis. You'll get a proposal for every single one of them, and CPC will be able to decide which, if any, to fund, and then out of that, we'll figure out how to finance it.
It sounds like, to me, Patrick, that the first step we might want to consider is development of both a short-term and long-term capital budget on a per project basis. So there's some way to measure what we're doing on an annualized basis, because ultimately auditors are going to want to audit against a master document.
And Jay, it's absolutely the case. We have that preliminary summary, and we also have a very lengthy capital needs assessment done by an outside consultant.
Right.
So there's a budget with detail, and there's a summary that we would be proposing to you. And that would be the same for Andrea. We haven't given
I'll give you another example. At Heaton Court, a lot of folks have to have home health care workers come in and work with them because it's, senior housing. They've got a grant for $123,000 to redesign and expand parking at Heaton Court because there's nowhere for these people to park now, and there's not enough parking for even all of the folks who currently live there. They estimated that they need about $100,000 more to finish the project for the upper and lower driveways, to start and finish, to complement that 123. So this is one of the projects at Heaton Court that would be on the list, is basically similar to what we did for the driveway at Pine Woods, figuring out how we support the needs of the people there with adequate parking for both residents and the folks who serve those residents. So all of these projects are standalone, though. If you don't like the driveway projects in Heaton Court, then that one gets voted down and it doesn't go into the bond. But we're going to bring to the group by the February 10th deadline something like 15 or 16 projects that all qualify as long-term capital projects. I would never suggest that we do long-term borrowing for short-term capital needs, for things that don't have a lifespan that equal or exceed the length of the time frame of the borrowing. So, similar. So, parking, for example, that parking lots are going to last for 20 years. It's justifiable to borrow to pay for them. On the other hand, if it was somebody doing something that was more short-term in nature, personally, I don't think that would be an appropriate use of money that we're going to pay for over a long term.
So you've run all this by Donna.
I am absolutely doing that.
Contingency. All these projects have contingency.
All right.
So I hear what you're saying. And really, by the way, I'm really glad to hear the success of Pine Woods, because the fact that it has been a
It's really
model.
hard to hear when there's like several people talking up there. Could I just politely ask that it be one at a time?
So I just sitting from where we are, we see, for instance, a number of potential projects that we might want to bond. For instance, there are some very large parcels in Stockbridge that should be preserved. One has to do with the watershed for the reservoir. Another is along the lake, but really projects and it could be that at some point we'd be in a position to make a fairly large expenditure for property that would really be very important for the natural heritage. So let's say there's a price tag for $1 million for this property, or $2 million, and it's either put up the money now or forget about it. That would be a compelling reason to do some bonding. If we're talking about, long-term, we know that, legitimate concerns for capital expenditures on Heaton Court and Pine Woods and other potential projects, very legitimate, but it doesn't have the immediacy of, can we preserve this precious property now or never? And it's just a factor that I think we need to be concerned about, to sort of committing on because you can only sort of go to the town for so many bonding issues. And if people have said, well, we're already bonding for $1.5 million or $1 million for this, can we then that very year or the next year ask for another $1 million for this other thing? And at some point it gets.
Why couldn't we, Tom? I mean, we could do $1 million bond on an open space acquisition, and that would be roughly over, you can, I believe, bond open space up to 30 years. That'd be roughly $35,000. That's a completely reasonable ask for protecting, several hundred.
It might be reasonable, Patrick, from your perspective, but we have to get the voters of Stockbridge to approve any bonding that we have, any expenditures at a town meeting. And I just would suggest that asking for too many, quite a few bonding issues could be problematic. And believe me, affordable housing has from day one been a top priority. And we celebrate the success of Pine Woods, and we're, very willing to give where we can. And this will continue to be the case. But just as a member of this board, I would be wanting to ask some questions about the wisdom and the viability of making major bond requests of this type. I mean, I'm not convinced one way or the other, but I would need some convincing, and we'll certainly read the proposal very carefully, as we all will. But I'm just giving you this sort of candid heads up.
I understand entirely your point, Tom, and it's a good one. But the reason we're asking for this, for Pine Woods, is that it's a very substantial amount of work that's required right now. The property, I think, have any of you driven through it recently to see the condition? If you haven't, I would ask you please to go and at least drive through. A lot of the things are not visible from a drive-through, but the drive-through will give you an indication of really what difficult condition it's in. We have the documentation from a very reliable, and putting it off with $50,000 a year for 15 years, by the time we get around to finishing it, we'll have to start over again. And if we can get it done quickly at the moment, both will be lower than the cost of the bond, and a much more prudent way to improve the property, we believe.
So essentially, Randy, what you're saying, for Pine Woods, let's leave alone Heaton Court for right now. You're saying that there's a real need for $1 million of structural, if I can use the word, of restoration.
Capital needs.
Capital needs, thank you. And this is critically important. It's serving a significant constituency, serving kids, all this. We need $1 million budgeted. Here's our estimate of what these costs are, and we need to bond them. And these are the projects. So I get that part of it. What I still trying to get my head around, and sorry if I'm being redundant here, is where do we leave it up to the Housing Trust to make the decisions?
In the case of Pine Woods, the proposal and the needs are straightforward. The money comes to you. The bond money comes into your bank account.
Right.
Pine Woods or Construct is the manager and owner at this point. And
Got it.
they would be submitting their
Got that,
invoices
yeah.
by project. So the trust itself is here as an advocate for this project. We, as I see it, would not have any direct involvement other than obviously we'll also provide our own oversight because we're now very interested in how this project is managed and how it serves the population and that there's long-term attention to the capital needs. So we would not have any jurisdiction over the money as such, but we will have a very direct oversight about making sure the work gets done.
So you guys are going to be in effect the advisory committee that is giving us the proposal. You've identified the needs that the folks at Pine Woods and Heaton Court have given you and said, you know, we need this, the boilers are failing and we need to, if we don't replace them soon, people won't have heat next year, which is not a good thing, obviously. So you're serving in an advisory capacity to oversee that the work is being done as it should be. We are overseeing the payment of the bills as we would in any other project. Is that okay?
And the town is the guarantor.
Yes.
For this $1 million.
Right.
You know, and a question that could be raised is what happens if some of these monies were construed to be supported by CPC and CPC funding within this 20-year period goes away?
Right. That is the concern.
I mean,
Cannot.
We can't answer that.
Yes,
don't
we can. It is illegal. There's no way you can cancel the portion of CPC that is bonded. It is a commitment by the town to pay from future CPC revenues. There is no, and from the point of view of a guarantee, these are funds that would go to capital improvements now that would have the same oversight by our town treasurer and accountant that every other project does, and they would be reimbursed the same way every other project would. And simply put, it simply is it's basically like rather than.
So it's a matter for the voters, is what he's saying.
Fixing your kitchen with cash up front, fixing your kitchen with a home equity line. That's kind of what this bonding thing is. It's you get the new kitchen right away.
Sounds like it's a matter for the town meeting.
Yeah.
It would be an article.
Yeah, of course. Like every other CPC article.
Jane?
I think part of my interest in this meeting tonight is finding out what's going to be the most, I don't know, what makes the most sense to the CPC. It's a new affordable housing trust. This kind of bonding is new for Stockbridge. And so whatever makes this feel most compelling to you and have the oversight that you want it to have. So that would be something you could say that we'll approve this and we want the Affordable Housing Trust to oversee it. I mean, I think that's guidance you can provide.
That was helpful.
I think that what we, you know, ultimately our responsibility is going to be to go to town meeting and say, we've thought about this and we've approved it. I think it would be helpful when you submit your final application, if you have a hit list. What is the most critical thing that you need to have done, both at Heaton Court and at Pine Woods, and why?
Project priority.
Obviously, if the boilers fail, it's catastrophic because not only do the folks who live there not have heat, but it's also risking the integrity of the building. So that's a big deal. What other things are there in this compilation that you've come up with, and why? Because I think that for $1 million bond, we're going to have to justify it. I don't think this is just going to sail through the way our usual. I mean, we've been very fortunate to have almost no controversy over anything that we've recommended to town meeting over the past 20 years. We've had a couple of questions, but nothing has ever been voted down. So, but I do think we have to be convinced, and we have to convince the voters.
Gary has.
Well, just a couple of comments. we're at the mercy to a degree of what the legislature votes
Correct.
to give us. And also, I would also add that the voters could vote CPC out.
They could.
So,
They can't if you bond.
But the town is on the hook for whatever.
well, then the town would be on the hook.
That's
But
correct.
No,
CPC can still be voted out.
No,
Right.
actually, that's not correct. If you decide to bond a project, and towns across Massachusetts have done it many, many times, CPC cannot be voted out during the lifetime of the bond.
Well, then I don't like it. I don't think that's right.
You know, look at, I know this is a new idea for us, but we've got 3 projects on this list which really concern me: roofing, siding, and boilers. Okay. What happens if the roof leaks? You know, water gets in and mold happens. Same with siding. You know, we've got a situation where these buildings are degrading, and we have to figure out whether we're committed to affordable housing. There's no easy solution here based on the way the Pine Woods was originally funded. So, you know, we're going to have to decide as a town whether or not the long-term maintenance, and I use that word sparingly, the long-term viability of these units is important to us. And I'm just, I'm at a loss to figure out how these issues get addressed in a timely manner, absent some kind of a bond approach. And if you have a problem for bonding for, you know, philosophical reasons, I understand it. But, you know, this is the situation we find ourselves in. These are aging buildings that need some attention.
Okay, I get the argument here, but what I'm still trying to wrap my head around is when the Affordable Housing Trust was established, it was my understanding that this was primarily going to be to help people purchase homes who can't otherwise afford to buy them. Now what I'm hearing is, well, let's put that aside. Let's talk about our priorities, namely Pine Woods and Heaton Court, and let's really focus on that. I agree that both are projects that are extremely worthwhile, but what I'm not quite under, you know, and I mean, arguably, Pine Woods could come to us and say, here's why we need $1 million to really fix this once and, you know, to really not be, you know, not a little bit at a time. You need a major amount right now to assure that Pine Woods remains viable. It's a lot of money, and the only way we can see is not to string it out, but to have a bond and spend $1 million fairly soon to really bring it up. I can see the logic of that. And same for projects with Heaton Court. But not quite understanding why the Affordable Housing Trust needs to be the intermediary here.
We're not.
I don't believe that they are being the Affordable Housing
So
Trust.
you're being an advocate then?
We're
Tom,
an advocate. No, just an advocate.
finish. You know, look we've got 7 people on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, including someone, Don Eaton, who's designated to Heaton Court, and Liz Wheeler, who's dedicated to Pine Woods. And these are just volunteers in town who are serving as a liaison, if you will, to try to dig down a little bit into what the needs of housing are. I think that we got to start with what the needs of our existing housing are before we start talking about expanding that housing. I don't believe that we can spread ourselves too thin. And these are pressing issues that the 2 existing developments we have with existing residents face.
I hear what you're saying, Patrick, but I do have to say that this is quite different from what you were saying when, you know, we were approving the Affordable Housing Trust. At that point, your argument was not about Heaton Court, it was not about Pine Woods, but it was about why working people can't afford to live in Stockbridge, and the character of Stockbridge is changing, and we need to be able to be really proactive in getting people to be able to afford to buy their own homes in Stockbridge. And that was your major thrust. So I just have to observe that has changed now. quite
It hasn't
dramatic.
changed, Tom. We have $200,000 in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that could go toward a habitat style partnership. We had a meeting at the last meeting. We had Mary Beth Mitz from Lennox talk in and talk about the units that they put just off Housatonic Street and how they funded those partially with the trust fund. These aren't either or questions, but if a boiler goes down or 5 of them do, then you lose 5 families. Those people literally.
Listen, I don't need to hear the scare tactics. You've made the
I'm not
case.
trying to scare you. It's the reality of what.
What I'm trying to understand is the shift here.
No, Tom, I would, no, like, it's, this is really what.
Yes. Carol.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to support what Tom is saying. I don't understand the involvement of the housing trust in the presentation. I mean, I think it would be a lot simpler for all of us. And Tom, I'm with you. I don't know if I'm for the bond or I'm against the bond. What I'm confused by is why isn't it Pinewoods coming forward as always and Heaton Court coming forward? And then and I still don't understand the answer to this one.
Right.
If the trust is asking us for money, why isn't that a separate, hello, how do, this is what the trust wants? Isn't that kind of what you're saying, Tom?
Yeah, I think that essentially, I'm not saying, I'm asking, but yeah.
I think somehow the information has been, shall we say, turned around in a circle. The trust is here in my presence here is simply to support the S, which are both for Court, and Jane is here on Zoom.
Yeah, it's not how it's done, Raymond.
Okay, well then how do we straighten it out? Because the Heaton Court and Pinewoods are the ones coming forward. The trust is supporting both of that. We are not actively involved in the maintenance, but we care a great deal of making sure that the affordable housing that we have is in good shape.
As we all
in just formal grant application style, you'd write a letter of support when they submitted the grant.
We will.
We can do that.
It's just tough for us. And I don't think Tom is against you. I'm sure not against you. We're just trying to say, this is confusing for us. Mm-hmm. So if Pinewoods needs something, this is the meeting where they come and they tell us, and Sally says things like, don't say the word maintenance. And somebody else asks, did you talk to town council? And we just smooth the way for you to submit a proposal that has a good chance. Same for Heaton Court. And I think we've always had good relationships with these. And then I thought I was hearing that maybe also the trust separately was going to ask for money. And then that's another thing.
That's correct.
Okay, well, this is just the time we talk about those, but it's been
Carol,
a
I think that's good advice.
confusing way to do it.
I think that's good advice, Carol. Remember, the trust has only been operational for several months. We're still figuring out how everybody works together, but I think that making the point that the proposal should come from Heaton Court, from the Affordable Housing, Stockbridge Housing Authority, and from Construct is an excellent point, and it's advice that we'll make sure that we take.
Okay, and listen, I just want to say again, Tom's not against you. I'm not against you.
No, it's good feedback.
Not against you. Just you got us confused, guys.
Okay, I have a comment or a question. Patrick, do you have any idea what the fine situation would be if we fall below our 10% or 15 or 13% or whatever it is? Do you know, Rainey?
You mean for the percentage of affordable housing?
Yes.
I think that we would go into a safe haven. I think they call it, you basically have to come up with a proposal to the state. We're nowhere near falling below it because
I understand that.
The formula only counts full-time residential homes, not second homes. So we're
One
in
of,
good.
one of the components of this, of our being in good standing with affordable housing is not only Heaton Court and Pine Woods, but also Riverbrook. I don't know if anybody's aware of that, but Riverbrook. Riverbrook is one of the, I was not aware of that. I was not aware that Riverbrook was our sort of over the top, getting us to our required numbers.
So I just have a additional, just procedural question for you, Patrick. You're on you're a member of the Community Preservation Committee, and you're also having a significant hand in a proposal. And I'm just wondering if that's a conflict or not, or how you see it?
No, I would say no, because let me tell you why. Each one of us is appointed by a certain portion of the town. We're here to represent our constituency in our jobs, if you will. I represent the Conservation Commission. Jay represents the Finance Board. And each one of us is tasked by our appointments to advocate for the thing that we represent one way or the other. Either saying, no, I think it's a lousy idea, or yes, I think it's a really good idea. The Finance Board approved of this. So I think bringing forward a project is not a conflict. That's just my opinion.
And I also asked Donna specifically about this when it was brought up last year, and she said actually the intent is that the opposite is true, that we're specifically supposed to advocate for projects that we feel are important. And I understand what you're saying, Tom. Look, I think that you make a good point that this is new, and we should proceed with judiciously, I guess, but I don't think it's a conflict of interest based on the definition of conflict of interest as I understand it.
We need more time to flesh out the details.
Yeah, I think so. And I certainly don't mean to make any comments about anybody's integrity. I'm just think that we need to be very transparent here.
And we're going to have to be transparent because I think this is going to require us to defend it.
Exactly.
And so we're going to have to feel that we're really on solid ground when we bring it to town meeting. And we're going to have to be prepared to defend it, and we're, in order to do that, we have to understand it. And we have to understand what we're asking and what the possible consequences are going to be, because people are going to say, well, supposing we do vote out CPC because we really don't like this. We really don't want the town bonding all this.
And I think the very transparency that we're talking about is one of the reasons that we were able to have a significant role with Pine Woods, because Pine Woods was still on the drawing board and it came before us. And we had to we had a public hearing and people came and expressed concerns about this project. And as I've mentioned to some of you, people in this very room came here and said, well, how are these people going to get to town? Thinking that this was welfare people who couldn't afford a car. And we were saying, well, they're going to drive to town just like the rest of us. It happens that there's a real need for affordable housing for working people in Stockbridge. So I think our transparency and our asking these tough questions in ways we're doing we're working together as a team. And we have to be clear about these things. And we have to be careful about, and being open and having these candid discussions now is far preferable than having these discussions on the town meeting floor when something's being voted up and down.
Dane and Kate both have their hands up. I don't know if you can see it with the way the screen is configured.
So do I.
I can't actually.
Well, my comment, this is Kate Fletcher calling, and I guess the comment I want to make is that this is a lot of money that is being distributed. And as a taxpayer, I greatly value the opportunity for the committee members to be able to ask questions and learn more about these requests. And I think that if necessary, if you feel that there's too many applications for one meeting, then it should be 2 meetings. But given the amount of money that's being distributed, I do stress that I certainly appreciate being able to hear the discussion and the questions and the answers.
Well, we have the one meeting set for the 27th. It's the 27th. And then we have another meeting scheduled for March 6th. So we have 2 meetings scheduled if we find that we can't get through the first round in a reasonable amount of time. And I
Does
think.
Jane have a hand up?
Jane, do you have your hand up? Did you want to say something?
I did want to say one more thing. Thank you so much for this guidance. It's really helpful. I think our goal in working with the Affordable Housing Trust in this way was to really present a united front that we Pinewoods values Heaton Court and we want to see them be successful. I think they support us as well. And so just making it clear that we're a united front to support all of the housing, affordable housing options. And if that's not coming across, if it's just overly complicated this way, then message received.
Sally?
Yeah.
It's Carol. I just want to go back to something you were saying because Sally Underwood Milk, I just think what you were saying was so important. And that is that we've been very, to use Tom's word, transparent. We've been very clear over the years. We've worked hard to present simple, understandable asks. People are calling it asks, applications. And we've maintained our credibility, and we must continue to do that. Sally threw it off, but it's a perfectly logical thing that could happen, that the town would say, well, now we've seen the way you operate, we don't want you. We have to continue, and I think that both Jay and Tom said, and Gary also, that it has to be consistent with what we believe people in town meeting are gonna understand and feel supportive of. So
Right.
I've talked enough. All we're trying to do, guys, is help you get it in a form, get a request in a reasonable and understandable form, so that year after year after 20 years, everybody's just voted aye to everything that CPC recommended. And we'd like that to continue.
I just like to say on behalf of the trust that we're really here as a team, and we're coming as a support to Heaton Court and to Pinewoods, not in place of them. And so if we gave that impression, I apologize, that would be my fault. But we really, we see our role as trying to do exactly what you said, trying to provide more affordable housing in our community. But when we looked, and we're getting educated right now, and when we looked at the situation of what we have, we felt that our first steps ought to be in support of these very, very fine projects that we have. However, we saw when they came before us and said, this is our situation. It was our idea to come before you, to have them come before you and ask for it in a bond form rather than in an annual. And so the applications will be directly with you. Our thought was that because they're both in the affordable category, if you decide to support a bond, that it would be a single bond and it would go to both of the projects.
I think it's simpler if it's separate.
Separate bonds?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I think so.
That's fine too.
I think it's simpler.
And just thank you, Randy. And besides these two is the trust going to be also putting in a separate request?
We will be putting in a separate request just to ask for, general funding that we would allocate to the projects that will be coming forward.
Okay. Do you know what that amount will be for you?
Because we haven't known how much these other asks would be, it would be
okay.
What we feel might be left over. We'll take the crumbs.
Okay, I want to move this along. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Sally, can I
Yeah.
just one
Yeah,
thing though?
sorry.
With the things with Pine Woods and with Heaton Court though, I think if we're on the floor of the town meeting, they're going to want an action plan so that we're not going to revisit this thing again in another 10 years. I just jotted down, how did everything fall into disrepair? And, what's the oversight, for all these capital improvement projects? And why are they all of a sudden here before us in one big lump versus, how do we take care of these on a general basis every year, I think many people are going to want to know that.
People are going to ask, but I mean, Heaton Court is from a structural standpoint, old. Because almost 40 years old?
Well, I
know.
Already knowing the answer, but.
I get that, but I think, they're going to understand that things break down, and Heaton Court has been doing a good job in trying to make ends.
I just remember last year, though, they asked the same question about the bridges and the highway trucks. Why all of a sudden, do we have to buy?
Why are we in such a mess? Why are we in such a mess?
Yeah.
That's what they're going to want to know. And they're going to, there's some,
Just know they're going to ask.
it's somewhat of a legitimate question, how did we get to this place and how do we avoid getting into this place again? So I think that's something that we're going to have to address when people get up, and we know who the people are who are going to get up and say, how are we in such a mess and how are we going to avoid having this happen again? So I think that part of your job is, as the Housing Trust, is going to have to be to come up with those answers.
Right. And Sally, I think that categorizing these issues as a mess is a little bit unfair. As Bob pointed out.
Maybe that's the wrong way to put it, Patrick, but that's the way it's going to come across.
We need to see the proposal and go from there and work step by step.
That's the way it's going to come across, and that's how people are going to approach it. I'd be willing to bet you $10 on that.
Just one final comment there. I'm sorry?
Just one comment I'd want to make is that my suggestion is that you also think about this from an equity standpoint. And I think, I know that I will be thinking, well, I live in a modest home and I've been working hard all these years. And, so I think people might be thinking, okay, well, where's the equity here?
I feel like I need to respond to that. The town has also applied successfully to be part of community grants for home repair for at-need homeowners. We have about $160,000, I believe, in a grant that has been unfrozen due to COVID, that was frozen during COVID, that homeowners can apply for. We're also in the middle of applying for a new round of these CBDG grants with the town of Lenox, town of Lee, to try to address the needs of private homeowners. Kate, we're trying to do everything we can for as many people as we can. And a lot of this is just that we're just learning about what some of these many options are. And frankly, a lot of us are working hard to not silo these opportunities to help people, but to really view it as many efforts that are going on concurrently.
I definitely applaud that approach. Thank you.
So if I may, I just want to, having raised a lot of questions here, I just want to end with just a comment that I applaud the efforts to find commonality and to work together and to see the need to work as a team. So I applaud the idea behind it, and I applaud your efforts to work together. And I thank you all for being candid with us and engaging in the discussion that we've had.
Do we have any other projects?
Yes, I do. I want to say one last thing. I've been a proponent of workforce housing, or whatever you want to call it, for a long, long time. And I'm despairing, and have mentioned this to any number of people, of where our town is going, and the fact that we're aging out. Our fire department, which is supposedly a volunteer fire department, needs to have young, vital folks that are on it. I find it disturbing that our police don't live in town. I don't know who the people who are building these multiple $1-million houses and resorts and everything think are going to work at their facilities if we don't have people, young people who can live in the town, afford to live in the town. We're at a real crisis here, I think, and I want your assurances as the Housing Trust that you are doing what you can do to not only support the housing that we already have, but to look for opportunities to jump in and find other opportunities to make housing affordable for young families to come in and live in this town. Because we're losing the town as a community. We're becoming a bedroom community for Boston and New York. And that's not the way I want to see my town go. Just my personal opinion. All right.
I'd like to say, we really do appreciate those comments.
And we agree.
And we agree.
I was like, you've got my script. This is exactly how I feel.
Okay, so let me go on. I know that Ellen Spears, you're here, and Teresa, you guys have been waiting patiently to, and I'm not sure who else, is there anyone else here who's presenting a project?
I'm not, so I'm just listening tonight.
Okay, great. So Teresa, you're up.
Before Teresa starts, I'm just going to recuse myself from this part because I do work for the Waldorf School.
Bye, Patrick. Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I'm here representing the Board of Trustees of Berkshire Waldorf High School at 14 Pine Street. We are pretty far along with the agreement with the Congregational Church to purchase the old Town Hall, Proctor Hall building. Our fundraising so far has been robust, and we feel we have we feel it's about a $5 million project. We have already raised over $3 million. The purchase and sale will not be completed by February 10th, when your deadline for applications is, but the church is going to apply along with us, I guess. And then if we're awarded CPC funds, it would be contingent on the purchase and sale that will be probably settled in a few months. The project is to restore the old town hall building to make it suitable for a 75 student high school, and also to have a community space in the large room upstairs. We've been working with Pam Sandler and Dana Bixby, who have just drawn up some absolutely fabulous plans and are going to take into consideration historic preservation. Pam is pretty, I think many of you probably know she's on the Historic Preservation Committee. And so the project, while we have not really begun to anything with it yet, because we're waiting for the purchase and sale to be signed, we feel that will all happen this year. So we would like to apply for CPC funds contingent on the sale, and probably ask for the same amount that was asked for and was awarded many, many years ago when the town first moved out of that building.
Teresa, what specific work are you going to ask us for?
Well, I don't have specific costs yet, but, you know, for example, the outside of the building is going to be just restored the way that it is. And there's definitely going to need windows to be replaced. And there'll be custom windows in keeping with the, you know, historic nature of the building, just to keep the integrity of the building the way it should be. We also we don't know what we'll uncover when we get in there, especially in the back of the building. It was the 1839 part of the building in the far back. We think that we may uncover some history when we get in there, and we want to preserve that. The jail is back there. We want to preserve the jail. We're definitely going to be preserving the ceiling of the large community room upstairs that, you know, will be, you know, the school is a 4-day-a-week, you know, Monday through Thursday school, operating September to June. We, you know, the school has every intention of letting that community space be available to others for other uses for the town.
The jail brings new meaning to detention.
There's been a lot of jokes like that and are flying around for sure. But the way that Pam and Dana have drawn it up, they actually had preserved that part of the building so that if we wanted to use it as a walking tour for Stockbridge, that you could go in there, you could go in and see the jail and hear some history of the building without disturbing the school in any way. So they're just doing some really wonderful historic considerations so that it's a school, but it's also a point of interest for the community as well.
Carol, I have a question, but I see Carol's hand is up, so.
Carol?
Quick one, Tom, and then it's you. Sally, one for you. Wasn't that 250,000? And what did we do with it?
It's been, the roof has been capitally improved, and the rest of the money has come back to the town, so it's gone into the reserve fund.
All right, so we don't have it, the town does. And then my second question for Teresa.
Well, it's in our reserve fund.
We do have it. It's in our reserve.
It's identified. Okay, good. Good. All right.
Designated funds.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay. Anyway, and then a question for both Teresa and Sally. That's a big building, and a school goes from the morning to the afternoon, and I think Waldorf is 4 days a week. Are they going to make space available to the community? And then is it more than historic preservation? Do they have another pot they could apply?
Well, Teresa did answer that earlier. She said.
Yeah, she did. She said that they're going to have the community space upstairs, which is where we used to hold town meetings, as I'm sure you remember. It was discontinued in part because it was not ADA accessible to the upstairs, and the town did not see fit to put in an elevator. So Teresa said they would have that available for community events.
Right. I heard her. My question was for you, Sally. Does that make them eligible? Which pots are they eligible for? Not open space, maybe recreation, historic preservation. Where are they?
Historic preservation, if they do, if the building is available for community events, that gives it public access, which is an important component.
Right.
Also
But still historic.
Also, walking tours, if I understood what Teresa was talking about, just, I mean, you could have a photo of Arlo back there.
And Rick,
In the interest of,
So, yeah, historic preservation. I mean, it's an important building that needs to be,
so just the one pot.
I think just the one pot, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
so in the interest of full disclosure, I should say that the town has had 2 reuse committees.
Yes.
I'm one of the few people that was on both. And in the second go-round, I haven't talked with you, Teresa, in several years, but in the second go-round, Teresa and I sort of talked a lot about potential uses of the town hall. And I was very instrumental in helping to raise money for an architectural plan that the school also contributed to. So I don't know if I need to recuse myself on this. I don't think so, but I would like to
It's not
say,
going to benefit you financially.
no, great. I would like to say to Teresa, hello, I haven't talked to you in a long time, and it's really encouraging to see the progress that you're now reporting. I have heard that there's been some bumps in the road, if you will, along the way, but I'm glad that things seem to be coming to a conclusion. I have just one question is back when the town owned the building, the church owned the land, and that created a certain dynamic. Will that continue to be the case when you complete the sale? Will the church still own the land, or will you be buying the land as well?
We'll be buying the land. So the thing, it's such a complicated property. And one of the things that's holding up the purchase and sale is that we need a new site plan. If you looked at the current site plan, you would see that that building, basically the steps on the side of the building are where the edge of the property line currently is drawn. So that needs to be surveyed and redrawn before we can settle on a purchase and sale so that we know exactly what the lot looks like. So that's kind of what's holding things up right now, but it's in the works. And we looked at doing a ground lease with which would have looked a little bit like the situation that the town's been in with the Congregational Church all these years, where the church owns the land and the town owned the building as long as they stayed there. So we looked at that, but the problem with that is that we would not be able to borrow money. Say we get into the project and we uncover something that it's unexpected, and we need to go to a bank and borrow $800,000, which we should be able to do if we own the building, but we would not easily be able to do if we were leasing the building. Right. So we had to move into a purchase of the whole property and kind of sort of disentangle it, if you will. And also, we still have to raise a couple $1 million, and we have people on our potential donor list who we know aren't going to be comfortable if it's a lease situation. They're going to look at that as it's hard for people to understand. It's hard for people to open up their checkbooks if for such a complicated arrangement, whereas the purchase and sale will be much cleaner. And you see the problem. If we were not owners, we can't even apply for the grant, without the owner of the property. So we've decided that the clean thing to do is to just disentangle that lease situation entirely and become owners of the building and
the land.
And the land, exactly. And
at this juncture, the church is okay with selling the land and the building.
Yes, and they're going to be able to put some money in their coffers because it is an asset that they can help them, help their organization. So I think that's appealing to them. And just the knowledge of, after all these years, what's it been, like 15 years, this building's been sitting there empty, or maybe even longer. This, the realization that something that workable has to be done with it, and no solution all these years has been perfect. But the school going in there is such a good fit with the golf club, needing parking in the summer, the school being not in session in the summer, the school not in session on weekends, so that the church can have all that parking on Sunday, so that the school will be a good partner for the shared parking arrangement that's already in place with the golf club and with the church. So this is about as good a fit as they could hope for. And we did raise all this money because the school wants a permanent home. The school really has been in Stockbridge now for several years, really wants to stay in Stockbridge, and wants to be a centrally located school in the middle of a community, not a campus school, way out like you find most schools nowadays are. The part of our business model is to be close to town. So it's the perfect situation for us. And I think that the church, after so many committees studying it all, has come to terms with that this really is the best solution. So that's where it is. And it's going to happen. It's complicated, but it's going to move forward.
I'm really happy to hear this progress, Teresa. Just one other question. I'm thinking about the chime tower. Does the town still end up owning land in that section, or?
Yes, the town owns that land and more, called the town green. I'm not really sure. I've seen it in drawings, but I'm not exactly sure where the.
So essentially, the land will be divided three ways between the town, the school, and the church.
Exactly. I think that the town's going to. The town will end up keeping all the land that it currently has, and that's really how it's going to end up. And this will end up being good for the town too. The town has continued to pay insurance on the building, and that's going to come off the books, because the school will be able to, with the money that we're able to raise right now, and if we can get in there and it really does stay on the somewhere around the $5 million budget that we have for it, or where the estimates that our architects have worked up, then I think we'll be in good shape to be able to maintain the building and pay for it and keep, pay for its upkeep throughout the years. And we'll be doing that because we'll be in a bigger space and we'll be able to grow the school. And I know that the whole thing that people sometimes always stop me, but there's not enough kids in the public schools around here. But if you understand what a Waldorf school is, people move to areas for Waldorf schools. It's a whole different thing. So it's actually addresses a little bit of the Southern Berkshire County being an area where only old people are moving to. We actually have families moving here for the Berkshire Waldorf School, the lower school in Great Barrington, and now the high school. And a lot of those families have kids in both of those schools. And they look for housing in the area, they look to move to the area, and they bring with them, their children, and their children grow up here. And that's exactly what I did. And many other people I know. So those are the markets of people that we're going after. There are probably 3 times as many lower Waldorf schools, grammar schools around the country as there are high schools. There are not that many high schools. So we're a coveted resource in the Waldorf school community, a prosperous high school.
Just finally, one quick question and a couple quick questions, or an observation, which is, the question is, ideally, when are you hoping to actually have the work finished on the building and be able to actually move in? Do you have a time frame there?
2.5 years.
How many?
2.5 years.
4.5 years, okay.
Two and a half. That's my optimistic timeline. I know how.
So the observation is that I was very pleased to hear the priority you're giving to preserving the historic character of the building. And particularly the older part of the building, which is now in the back, which has some real history to it. Do you, so just in terms of projects that you could apply for funding for, I think two things really come to mind. One of them, I'm not sure how it works with our guidelines, but one has to do with projects that would really be directly involved with preserving the historic character of the building would be of particular interest to us. And the other has to do with the Stockbridge Muncie Indians. And if there's any thought given to having a room that they could use, or accessibility or displays about that particular part of our history.
If separate from this, if there's somebody that I could speak with specifically about that, there is probably something that could be worked through. One of the things that we are doing is we're discovering some more space than we thought we even had there. So for example, if in the upstairs part of where the big community room is, right now there is a space where people, where they were just storing chairs and tables, and it's maybe 5 feet tall. Most people couldn't stand up in there. Well, that whole roof had at one point burned, and it has to be redone. That's one thing that the engineering studies have shown. So that's going to be redone. When it's redone, that space is going to be available up there as extra space that we didn't even figure into our original plans. And wasn't even being talked about when you were on that committee a few years ago, when we were both on that committee. We didn't really factor in that space. So that's just my long-winded way of saying that there is more space there that we have not, that we're discovering, that we have not completely figured out what our needs would be for that. So if there's a component of working something historical in, especially with the Stockbridge Indians, I think that would be fascinating and of interest to an awful lot of people, and a really good thing to do. So a contact person there to speak with I would love that.
Just for starters, one person that you may start with is our former police chief, Rick Wilcox, who maintains a very close rapport with the Stockbridge Indians and has a very real interest in historic preservation.
Awesome.
This is a separate conversation that you and I can have, but.
And Teresa, I would strongly suggest you talk to Linda.
And Linda as well, yeah.
Next door to you on the screen. I don't know if you can see her. But she is our historic preservation guru. And I think she would be able to give you some really good advice as to how to prioritize what you're going to ask for.
Great. Hi, Linda.
Hello.
Okay, I will follow up in both those steps.
Okay, is there anyone else out there? There was Tamara, whoops, I just lost you. Come on.
It's not on the screen.
I don't see her anymore, so maybe she was just an observer. Is there anyone else who has anything else to put before us today? All right, thank you, everybody.
To adjourn, rather.
Second.
Aye.
Thank you to my committee. Thank you all for being here, you guys. This is always such an important thing to do.